So, research. How do we go about doing this? Well, before I start talking about how we go about doing it, which quite frankly is rather simple, I wanted to make sure that you understood a few other issues concerning research before we even get to actually the doing of it. So I thought I'd share with you a picture of me with my robes and my three stripes and the hood and all of the rest of that with my just having earned my PhD. It's an older picture back from 2009. I've probably lost a good amount of weight since then. And of course, when you're doing dissertation work, you do an awful lot of sitting at desks and all that kind of good stuff. But I wanted you to notice two important lessons that I learned. Quite frankly, they were the first lessons that I learned, and they carried me all the way through the program. You see them here. As soon as you've asked a question, you've already biased your search. That's just a crucial issue to get across when you do research. That you have just imposed yourself on the research, so you have now biased it simply by being a part of the research. Keep that in mind. That's not necessarily bad, and there's no real way to get around that, but I want to make sure that you understand that going in. And number two, ask yourself the question, what am I not hearing? So you're reading all this stuff and everybody's agreeing with your point of view, and then you must stop and you must ask yourself the question, is there anybody out there that doesn't agree with me? And if they don't, then what have they said about it? And could I learn something on their behalf? All of those kinds of questions are good as well. So what you care about will impact how you study about that care. So when you're watching this film and you're getting your project together and you're asking yourself the question, what do I really want to write on because I really feel, the issue of justice in whatever cause is really important. Understand that what you care about will impact how you go about talking about that care. However, you still bear responsibility for very important issues such as honesty. You need to make sure that your sources can be trusted. Have they been vetted? Are they peer-reviewed journal articles and so on? I've mentioned some of that in some of the assignments you'll see on Canvas. And then there's transparency. Have you dealt properly with the ethics, the issue of good and bad, right and wrong? And is that coming through in the research you're doing? And then there's even-handedness. I've suggested bias. In fact, I talk about this quite a bit in 131. But we're going to talk more about it in this particular class because it's about research and it's about argumentation. So what does that mean for us as well? Questions to ask yourself. Could I be wrong? I mean, glory be. Just think about that for a moment. Have I ever looked at all sides of an issue? Am I broad-minded? And let me just make a quick comment about that. Nobody is truly open-minded, and we are all closed-minded to some things. So your presuppositions, your assumptions about life, we'll get to that again later on in the coming weeks, do matter for us. Do my biases mislead me? And then are my sources correct? These are questions we should be asking when we're doing research. So think of yourself as sitting around a table. And as you're sitting around a table, think of different people at the table. And you're hearing different points of view. Not people that always agree, by the way, and certainly don't agree with you. You should be asking questions of these people sitting around the table with you. You should be comparing and contrasting ideas. You should be offering alternatives or distinctives of your point of view. You should be moderating your voice. And by that I mean not decibel levels. I'm talking about your voice in terms of the words that you choose. Maybe, could, perhaps, it might be. These kinds of words, couch your words in ways that say, you know what, there's a real possibility I could be wrong, and there's going to be maybe more information that comes along that could show that I need to take a moderation stand. So those kinds of words are important when we write. So, doing the work. I think that honestly the easiest way to go about this is just go to Google Scholar. There are different ways you can get at this in the IUPUI library. Feel free to go after those. They're right there for you on Canvas. But Google Scholar is a good place to start. A lot of folks actually find it more comfortable there because they've dealt with Google for a long time. So type in your keywords that you're really going after, and remember to vary those words. Make sure that you're putting in different words so that you might pick up on different aspects of whatever theme or idea that you're interested in. And then focus on the types of sources. So I've asked you to collect at least two journal articles from this. So that means that you're going to look for journals that speaks from an expert point of view, or at least an expert that has dealt with the field in whatever issues or concerns that you might have. Then, of course, look for the other side. You'll be hearing me talk about that all the time. And then understand that academic disagreement is good. You don't have to yell at people. This is not a Twitter world at IUPUI. We're actually caring about facilitating information and knowledge. And I put this picture up here because I thought you'd get a kick out of seeing this. You have a black progressive, Cornel West, who's actually, by the way, spoken at IUPUI, and you've got Robert P. George, who's a white conservative, and they are best friends. I mean, I could show you picture after picture of these two guys. They used to teach at Princeton together. Now they travel around the United States, going to college campuses saying, you ought to be having open conversations about real important issues instead of shutting people down. An important lesson, I think, for all of us. But you can check those guys out there. They're on Google Pictures and find them everywhere. So here are just 5 activities of a researcher. I'll just read them off. I would like to maybe do a video on each one of them, but here you are. A researcher offers solutions and instills practices that benefit people. We're looking for how can we better people and the world in which we live. The researcher sees the limitation of what their human endeavor means, that you can't solve a problem. In fact, the great Thomas Sowell, the great economist, historian, sociologist, said that there are no real solutions in life, only trade-offs, and that's a whole discussion point too. Then the researcher depends on others' work that makes her work possible. So we're all depending on each other's work. And in one way or another, you have to keep these things in mind when you're after research. Then we steward the academic intellectual gifts given to us. Don't blow this assignment off. Don't blow any assignment off. Don't blow off your degree. People have worked hard to get you where you're at. And yes, I mean that. Yes, you've worked hard too, but I'm talking about parents and supporters and sponsors, and perhaps you've been given grants and so on. All of these kinds of things matter, and they really do make a difference in all of life. And professors, don't forget us. And then, of course, a researcher asks questions to prompt answers, expanding opportunities for other scholars to follow, not for self-promotion. So literally, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants that have gone before me. And these are great men and women who have done great work. And I'm simply adding a little piece. That's all I'm doing. And that's what you'll be doing. And I encourage you in that. And I smile about it because I think that's really powerful and important. Don't forget what I used to say in high school. I don't want you to believe anything I believe, but I want you to go check this out for yourself. And I want you to make sure that you know exactly what it is that you believe and why. So we come back to these 2 PhD questions. This is, by the way, a picture that actually hangs right across from where I shoot this video in my house. It's called The Bookman. It's one of the very first pictures I ever purchased to hang on a wall in my house. The 2 important questions. As soon as you've asked a question, you've biased the research. Just remember that about yourself. Doesn't mean you need to stop or do anything different. Just remember that. And then number 2, ask yourself the question, what am I not hearing? Is there another side? There certainly is, to every issue, by the way, and different points of view. And if you're only hearing one point of view, you ought to stop and listen and take account of that. And then consider, how should I go forward with my research? Words and research in week number 2. Hope you're doing great work on your assignments. I'm looking forward to reading them.